Yeah.
is coming up in June. I believe it's in Nashville this year.
Yeah.
Murfreesboro.
Murfreesboro. Yeah.
So there won't be
No overnights.
lodging expenses,
Yeah.
but
Thanks,
they still
Heaven.
have that afforded to you.
Yeah.
That's still in
We
this
need to go to
budget.
those things, yeah.
So that is there.
All right, and the other
We
question,
used to go to all of those
yeah,
meetings. I went to every one of them.
first 3 years, I went to everything, everything. So I like,
But what you would find
I
out
went to
that
all the classes.
our departments we were always the shining example of what,
But there's so much information people learn there.
and it is
Yeah, it's your
good
job.
for new.
Yeah, it was.
New aldermen,
And the other
yes.
thing is there's training that consistently gets updated that you miss if you don't go to those trainings. And I think those things are essential. But anyway, the other thing is, let me ask you about this. Of course, we have the notices. We can't get out of that. City election. Let's see, where was the, okay.
It's a leadership
Where-
retreat.
Is there anything, what kind of money are we spending, or do we spend the money on all those newspapers that come in here that are put in our box?
Those are part of the TML stuff
They
that you
provide
get.
that?
Yeah, that's just provided as part of that
I was-
overall membership that we
I was
have.
wondering if anything that we're getting is online.
You can see that
That's
online.
But
They
we don't,
It's automated
we don't
through
have to
TM.
pay.
Yeah,
TM.
they just fired out to
We're not spending that
everybody.
out of our budget, though.
No, that,
Okay. Because, I think that there's,
Each year, they ask for a list of our
yeah, we give them a
department
list of elected
directors
officials
I'm
and they
just looking
elected
to see if there's anything
officials.
online that we could go to, cutting.
I have
You
looked
can
at,
get
I
it
have looked
online.
at it online. I've
Yeah,
looked at it
I know,
online.
but if we're not spending the money out, I just.
What's the air travel?
That's the same thing to provide for if you want to go to a National League of Cities or you want to do any of those kind of things. That's provided, we provided some funding for it and have had that in the last couple of budgets. Just if you want to avail yourself of any of
I
those.
haven't been to anything lately, but I did go to economic development one time, and I did go to something in, is it Charleston? No, Savannah, and that was excellent. And every now and then, if something comes up where it's going to have a lot of training in it, or it's going to have a lot of information, I've been to some that I wouldn't bother to go back to. I mean, just,
Well, and I think it's important that if we ask employees to cut back on things that aren't
we have-
absolutely necessary, that we join in that to try to.
There's still been the
Last
professional
3
travel.
Yeah.
There has been even
Mayor
in these
has
last
to
3
Yeah,
years.
not that I just think
But
we
I
need to make a
understand,
conscious effort.
Yeah, we've
We've cut way
reduced
back.
that overall across departments, but we
Yeah.
have maintained a level.
That's right.
Because we have folks with professional certifications and licensing that we need to maintain, that benefit us to maintain, plus just their involvement in professional associations absolutely pays off for us in terms
Yeah,
of
gotta have that.
staying connected, new ideas that they bring back that help us
Yeah.
save money and do things better. So
know there's-
we're trying to strike the right balance of being good stewards with those dollars, but also making sure we continue to develop our people and keep them tied into
And
good
there's-
professional development
There's more
opportunities.
things like webinars that you all are doing.
Absolutely.
Which is helpful because it lets our people stay here and do the webinars. And, like Russ, you all have to go out to some of these meetings that you've got to be at. And I think there's, some things that we as aldermen should go to once in a great while. And I know when I went, I just drove to Savannah and back. But, and the mayor's got to go to something once in a while to just be connected, but we just got to choose those wisely.
Anything else on elected? Okay. But then we have our preliminary revenue estimates.
This is an ongoing
Yeah,
effort. We just wanted to give you what we had at a point in time. We continue to look at those and update those, look at what comes out of the state funding board in terms of what they're recommending, trying to look at that compared to our own performance over time. And so, we keep tweaking and adjusting these numbers, and will probably until right before we send out that recommended budget to you.
Before we press.
And then probably after that as also. We tend to keep tweaking that as new information comes out.
This is the reason I was looking, there's not very much more money. And in fact, whenever I was looking at the 51 million, a big chunk of that was that TOC.
Carry over some grant dollars.
Grant or something like that.
I think the version that we gave you last month did not have that grant money in. We had, I mean, you talked to the TOC people, and they made their presentation. They had the expense, but not the revenue in there. So we're going back and making sure that everything that has a grant tied to it is, we're showing both the revenue and the expense. Just to elaborate on what Eric said, the State Funding Board did meet last week, and they did raise the state numbers. Not a whole lot, but they're in the upper 3% growth range on sales tax for the state, where they were in the lower bounds of the 3 range before. We still don't know. The big shoe to drop is still the property tax. We still don't have the assessment on that. That could be $1 million swing. We simply do not know, and we won't know because it is a reappraisal year.
That's right.
You know, we're not going to get any change except for the new growth. But it's hard to determine how much that is because we don't really know what was incorporated last year. We do know there are several big projects going on that, you know, if they're picked up in a meaningful way, could really boost that number. I mentioned the local sales tax. Business taxes, we're still looking at the monthly returns to try to figure out really where we are on that.
Is the state doing a better job on collecting those?
Not
We thought
really.
it was going to be better, but then they really...
Not really.
It's
Yeah.
picked up, but the sad thing about the business tax is it's broken into 4 categories. And the big category files the end of May, 1st of June. So our budget is already printed before we really have a good feel for what's coming in. The same thing's true with the income tax. We find out in July what our accrual is for income tax for calendar 2010, which is our fiscal 11. You know, the reports that came out last week at the federal level on income tax indicated that the stock market came back and a lot of people out of fear cashed out. If that's the case, the state tax returns are going to go up. You know, I know a lot of people that I talked to paid a lot more in state taxes this year, but we won't know until July. So we're more or less sticking with our 1.2 million estimate at this point until we get some indication otherwise. The other state shared taxes, remember, there's a tiny sliver of the state tax that they share with cities. You know, we were very bashful about going up on that.
I think you just did a very
Yeah, I think we plugged in a 250,000 increase for all of the state shared taxes. Well, we were talking about that this morning in our little budget group. We know for a fact that our slice of the pie is going to be bigger this time because of our population.
Yeah.
That's true.
You don't know
We
how
just
much.
don't know how big the pie is.
Yeah.
So, you know, last year we found out on June 11th what the state shared taxes were going to be. So we're pushing them to try to give us a better indication early. We can take some of the state funding board information and make some assumptions and get a little closer, and this number will probably pick up just a little bit. But it's very difficult to say. The big numbers, of course, are the property tax to a lesser extent and the sales tax to a greater extent. And, you know, we got another month in under our belt with 7% increase. I would point out that where we had been beating the state regularly by a considerable amount, we didn't this time. But we don't know if that's because we had a tougher number to compare against in February of the prior year. Remember, the numbers are getting better, so
Right,
it's getting a little harder to get 9 and 10%
Increase versus
increase.
increase now.
Right.
But also, we don't get the sales tax on an automobile. If you go buy a $100,000 Mercedes, we get $18. Because we only get the local tax on the first, $1,600, I think?
Something like that.
$1,600 or $1,800. So that's all we get. So when people are buying bigger items, it tends to move money away from the staples where we get the full amount. So we'd really like to have another month if we could. We're not going to be able to get it because we need to get you the budget, but we'd like to get, you know, what reports we can from at the national level about general sales tax before we pin something down. The budget, the
Well, the
revenue.
revenues we're working on right now are a little above 51 million, but the current budget's at 50, just over 50, yeah.
But included in that 50 was a draw on fund balance
Right.
for
Yeah.
many of the capital items.
$900,000. Our spending looks like it's going to come in around 48 or so.
Yes.
In terms of actual expenditures by departments, so that's another year where we've done a great job of really controlling expenditures,
that's
which has been good because revenues haven't always
Yeah.
risen to the level either, but that's where we're looking at, and next year's looking at, I think it'll be a little higher than 51, but we're still working on that in terms of what those numbers will look like.
And that we had projected, though, for this current year, an increase in sales tax. So even if we're getting 7% more than we got last
Right.
year,
We
part of that
already
was
projected.
already projected.
We already projected it,
And we
right.
had it budgeted
Yes, it
for
was.
that. So it's,
Very
But,
good.
but through the 8 months, we're actually, what, a couple of $100,000
Yeah.
even
Ahead of
ahead of
that
the
number.
budget.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So the numbers have been very good, and overall, I'd say it's
Yeah, we're
much
happy.
better,
We're happy.
but not great.
That's right, that's right. But-
It's kind of been a steady.
Set it out,
Yeah.
yeah.
Let me ask you something about.
But that means, that a few $100,000, though, is not a big thing
No,
if you're talking
in the
about
grand scheme
projecting
of
it
things.
for this next year that
That's
we're
correct.
looking at. That's what we're saying. Go ahead.
Oh, just looking this over, background checks. Do we do those for other people, other entities? Private sector, companies?
Not for the
Why?
private sector.
They
You'd
can't
have
come in and
to,
ask for.
Why would we?
don't. I was gonna say, could
They would
we
have to
not
pay,
up
don't
this?
they?
Could we not, for not doing it, can't like company AYZ walk in here and say, go through the police department and have a background check and pay us to do that?
I think that'd be a question for the chief and for the legal department, but that's probably not something that we would want to get involved
We
in.
don't do that?
Just because of liability, we'd have to turn around and look at what,
So what's this background check? $1,000?
that's probably where we recoup some money from city court. Is it a revenue?
It's a $1,000 revenue.
Yeah, that's probably something that
It
we've
might be, I'm not
recovered.
sure. We'd have to look at that for
I'm
sure.
wondering where that's coming from. I mean, I'm looking this over going, whoa, this is interesting.
Okay,
All right.
okay, so we've got the
Just looking
update on
for ways
that.
to
And
increase this stuff.
in the monthly reports, we were saying that they are for information only. We've already talked about sales tax a little bit, but it has also the fuel hedging in the conference center. And they, and the others, excuse me, I should have known that on the back. Do we need to say anything else about them, or are we just?
The one thing I would point out about the conference center is that we have received their budget for next year, their forecast, and they are forecasting a doubling of their net for next year.
'Cause
If
they-
you remember,
they'd
they
already
lost a
start-
little last year.
But they're really starting to improve,
starting to
They're
aren't
starting
they?
to
Come around,
improve.
yeah.
They had about $100,000 net
I think.
profit. And remember, that's after they set aside 4% of their gross for furniture and equipment, future purchases. So when you see that number, and it's positive plus another 4% of the gross that they've already set aside before they come to that. But they're projecting 200,000 for next year. So we'll have some of that information that we'll send out.
Well, is there anything else? I guess, is there a,
Do we need to set a meeting date?
oh,
I assume we don't need to meet on the 21st.
no.
We'll make sure that that's well known.
And so,
What will happen from here is you've now gone through essentially all the budget requests. We will be processing, we've continued to be working on what we can really put in a recommended budget for you. We're looking to get that out to you that Friday, May 6th, is kind of our internal deadline to try to get that out to you, let you have that for the better part of a week or so, and then have a series of hearings to start going through all of those items. I think we've put that in the schedule. And I don't have those dates in terms of the hearings off the top of my head, but I think
What do you
it's,
think they are? Because I need
I
to,
think we give it to you the 6th. I think we have a regular board meeting that week, and then the following week, I
10
think
days
we've got,
later, we start.
I think we've got the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday reserved, I think, for your budget meetings.
Here.
It's the
You need
week,
to, Calvin.
it's the week that you don't have a Bowman.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So that would be, I
May,
think,
right?
yeah, I think that would be the,
16th,
like
17th,
16th, 17th,
18th.
18th, yeah.
May
we need,
16th?
let's look at the, I mean, send them out to us because,
We'll send you out an update on the
So
budget
So
schedule.
what are we gonna do, about 5 o'clock, will that be?
That's typically what we've
I was going to
done.
say, send them out and because I know I've got some things that are going on there, but I also could meet earlier
Mhm.
sometimes
Okay.
too. So I just need to see what they are.
And what we've done in the past is we've scheduled those 3 dates, and we've kind of seen what we've needed to do if we needed to use them all. We haven't always used them all. So that's kind of your time to kind of go through and go through the pieces of that recommended budget. And then at the end of that week, typically, you'll move that on to the full board for the first reading, the last meeting in May, and then the final 2 readings in June.
So 16th, 17th, and 18th.
That, I don't
I'm
think,
putting
I
all
don't
that on my
think, if the 6th is a Friday, that would be Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
You want to
Oh,
do
good.
Monday, Tuesday? Wednesday?
No, I'm saying those dates would be, as I say, we need to look at those because,
Yeah, 16th.
Yeah.
Well, it'd be another
Yeah,
whole week.
but-
16th through 19th?
the Monday. I think
Yeah, we actually included the Monday.
So we
16th
went-
is Monday.
Yeah, so we actually included the Monday on this schedule.
16th, oh
Okay.
yeah, what does that say?
as I say, I just need to see what they are because
It just says
So do we need to
16th
put
through
the
the
19th?
19th.
let's have those
I
as,
put the 19th
you know,
down.
but as I say, I need to look at
I'll put it
some
down.
things for myself too and see if
We
I,
need to include
because
the
I'm not
19th, though.
working, which means that we can meet earlier. On the other hand, I may have some plans
Sure,
too.
sure.
So it's.
Well, if you want to look at those and let us know
If we
if
could,
there's
everybody
any
look at them.
changes there that you need
Since
or
we've
what
got
times
that
work
many,
best.
since we've got that many
Meeting date.
dates there, we can,
If
or something.
past experience over the last couple of years at least speaks, we may not need all those
I'd
dates. And we can
say
kind of look
one
at
or
what's worked
two.
best
I
for
have
you.
plans on the 19th, not to meet.
Okay. We could accept that and just go from there in terms of anything else you want to do to work through
Okay.
that process.
See what, yeah.
okay, well, that wraps us up then. I don't know, I've never known whether we had to have a motion to adjourn a meeting
I
like
guess so.
this.
I move to adjourn.
Okay,
Just going on.
all in favor, say aye.
All in favor? Aye.